Yo, so in my last video I talked about why I believe in God and why I think it's actually more reasonable to be a theist than not. If you haven't seen that, definitely check it out first, because today we are zooming in. Today's all about Christianity, not just some vague belief in a higher power, but why I believe in Jesus Christ. Why I think Christianity is true and why it's not just a religious option but something real, historical, and actually worth your attention. So if you've ever thought Christianity is just a myth or Jesus was just some nice dude who got misunderstood, let's break the idea wide open. Alright, let's start with something basic. Did Jesus even exist? Because, believe it or not, there are still people online, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube Shorts saying Jesus is made up, like the Tooth Fairy. But the idea is not just fringe, it's rejected by basically all serious historians, including atheists. Bart Ehrman, a guy who's agnostic, doesn't even believe in God, said this: Jesus existed and we know more about him than we know about almost anybody from his time. He also said to deny that Jesus existed is on the same level as denying the Holocaust. So yeah, Jesus existed. He was a Jewish preacher in 1st century Palestine. He gained followers and was crucified under Pontius Pilate. That's historical bedrock. As historian Paul Meyer puts it, the total evidence is so overpowering, so absolute, that only the shallowest of intellects would dare to deny Jesus' existence. Now the next question is, can we trust the accounts we have about him? The New Testament, especially the Gospels, are often treated like legends or religious fanfiction, but here's why that doesn't hold up. We have way more manuscripts of the New Testament than any ancient document, over 5,200 Greek manuscripts and over 20,000 in other languages. Compare that to Homer's Iliad, we have like 600 copies. No one just doubts that Homer existed. The manuscripts are early. The Gospels of Mark was likely written within 30 to 40 years of Jesus' death. That's not enough time for myths to grow. People who were there would still be alive to say, yo, that did not happen. Embarrassing details are included. Peter denied Jesus. The disciples are confused and scared. Jesus is crucified, a shameful death. This isn't the kind of stuff you make up if you want to sell a movement. The Gospels are rooted in eyewitness testimony. Luke literally begins with this: many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those whom from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the Lord. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. As F.F. Bruce, New Testament scholar, wrote, the New Testament documents are not only trustworthy, they are the best attested documents of the ancient world. So what do these sources actually tell us? 1. Jesus lived a public life of teaching and miracles. 2. He was crucified publicly in Jerusalem. And 3. 3 days later, his tomb was found empty by a group of his women followers. Now the last part might sound basic, but it's huge. In the ancient world, women's testimony wasn't even considered valid in court. So if you were making up a resurrection, you would not have women find the tomb first. That detail screams historical accuracy. So what are the actual facts most historians agree on? 1. Jesus was crucified. 2. His tomb was found empty. And 3. His disciples really believed they saw him alive afterwards. Even atheist scholars like Gerd Lüdemann and Bart Ehrman agree on these basic points, as Gary Habermas, who compiled over 3,000 scholarly works on the resurrection, says virtually all scholars agree that Jesus' disciples had real experiences they believed were appearances of the risen Jesus. Okay, but what if the disciples stole the body? There's a problem. These guys went on to be tortured and killed for their belief. People do not generally die for a lie they made up. They may die for something they think is true but isn't actually true. But let's not forget, these people weren't just thinking this was true, these people are eyewitnesses. They saw Jesus, they lived with Jesus, so they're not saying we believe that Jesus rose from the dead, they are saying we saw him risen from the dead, and they are dying for that. What if Jesus didn't really die? Roman executioners were professionals. The spear to the side, the blood and water, that is medically accurate. He was dead. What if it was hallucinations? Groups do not hallucinate the same thing. That's not how hallucinations work. And Jesus appeared to multiple groups, indoors, outdoors, at different times. Here's another thing, this tiny group of scared disciples turned into a movement that flipped the Roman Empire upside down. They had no military power, no money, and were persecuted, yet they kept saying, Jesus rose from the dead, we saw him. They could have just shut up, but they didn't. Almost all the apostles were killed for their belief. People don't suffer and die for something they know is a lie. Let's not forget that Jesus actually said, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, the last shall be the first. His teachings flipped human pride upside down, and those teachings became the foundation of Western civilization. Human rights, equality, dignity, all of that was planted by Christianity. C.S. Lewis put it like this, a man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said wouldn't be a great moral teacher, he'd be a lunatic or he'd be the devil. But we don't treat Jesus like a lunatic, we quote him, we admire him, we build nations on his words. Blaise Pascal, philosopher and mathematician, once said, Jesus Christ is the only God who has shown his wounds. G.K. Chesterton said, the Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting, it has been found difficult and felt untried. Lastly, and I can't prove this with a graph or a manuscript, but if you seek him sincerely, if you pray, if you open your heart, you will find him. Millions have, I have. Christianity isn't just a theory, it's a relationship. That doesn't mean everything becomes easy, but it becomes anchored. And in a world that's constantly changing, that anchor is priceless. As St. Paul wrote in Acts 17, he is not far from any of us, for in him we live and move and have our being. Pope Benedict XVI said, being Christian is not the result of an ethical choice or a lofty idea, but the encounter with the person of Jesus Christ. So yes, Jesus is not a myth. He's not just a prophet or a teacher. He's either a liar, a lunatic, or he's Lord. And if he is Lord, then everything changes. That's why I am a Christian, and that's why you should be too.